The tractor screeched like a wounded animal as it jerked to a sudden halt, throwing me forward, my face inches from the steering wheel. Just moments ago, I had been cruising along the northern edge of my field, sipping lukewarm coffee from my chipped thermos, humming to myself. And then, in a blink of an eye, everything changed. Dust choked me, my hands gripped the wheel in frustration, and before I could react, I was staring at a tangled mess of bright orange fiber optic cable, its coils wrapped tightly under my tractor like a serpentine creature. I jumped out of the cab, heart pounding, and surveyed the damage. This wasn't just any cable, it was professionally buried, deep in the ground. Deep enough to be nearly impossible to remove. But I hadn't buried anything here. There were no flags, no notices, no warning signs. Just dirt and nothing else. So what in the world was this? A quick yank on the cable showed it wasn't budging, and that's when I saw it. A small plastic tag hanging from it, marked with a serial number and a logo I didn't recognize. As my mind raced with confusion and anger, I followed the cable's path with my eyes, stretching across the field like a glowing orange snake with a mission to ruin my morning. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through county notices and permits, hoping for an explanation, but came up with nothing. No alerts, no emails, no letters, not a single thing. It was as if someone had come in overnight and laid the cable down without a word. I stomped back to my barn, fuming, and pulled up the security footage from my cameras. I'd installed them after someone tried to steal my chicken coop the year before. Sure enough, two unmarked white trucks had appeared at the break of dawn 3 days earlier. Men in reflective vests jumped out, looking like they were on some kind of caffeine-fueled mission. They didn't knock. They didn't even hesitate. They just started digging, laying down spools of cable and burying them in a hurry. No questions. No permission. It was as if they knew they had no business being there. I watched in stunned silence as they worked, a sick feeling creeping up my spine. I did the only thing I could think of. I called my buddy Randy. Randy was one of those guys who always had a bug-out bag in his truck and swore the pigeons were government spies. But weirdly enough, he was useful when you needed him. He showed up with a flashlight, a folding chair, and a bag of beef jerky. We sat by the cable like we were waiting for it to confess something. "It's the NSA," Randy mused, chewing thoughtfully. "Or maybe the HOA. I laughed, but his words hit harder than I expected. The HOA, or Homeowners Association, had been getting bolder in recent years, pushing the boundaries on things like trash collection and Wi-Fi contracts. They had been inching closer to my property line, and I wasn't having it. Sure enough, just as I started to fume again, Karen, the HOA president, rolled up in her black SUV all business, her clipboard in hand. She stepped out with that practiced smile, the one that told you she was about to ruin your life, but would pretend to be your friend while doing it. "Oh, good, you found the installation," she chirped like I had just discovered some great gift. "Installation?" I growled. "You mean the one that wrecked my tractor and runs across my land without permission?" "Well, technically it's a community project," she said, flipping through her notes. "We voted on expanding high-speed internet for the greater good." I blinked out. "You voted? Karen, this is my field. I own this land. You don't get to vote on it." She waved her hand dismissively like I was being dramatic. "You weren't using it. It's just a field. It's not like it's a house or anything. It's not up for grabs just because it's open space." Her eyes narrowed, and she added, "Let's be reasonable here. Your property is the only one the cable can run through to reach the main road. We assumed you'd be fine with it. It's not like we built a house on it." I shook my head. "I'm about to build a lawsuit on it," I muttered. She smirked. "If you want to get legal, you'll find this was all done above board, but I knew a bluff when I heard one." That night I stayed up late with my cousin Lydia, who moonlighted as a land use attorney. After combing through the legal filing, she grinned. No permit, no easement, no survey. They've gone rogue. It got worse. The HOA hadn't just buried cable across my land. They'd secretly partnered with a local internet provider, leasing them access rights as if they owned the place. They were getting paid monthly for that access, turning my land into a profit-making venture without paying me a single dime. It was like squatters' rights, except they had no right to squat in the first place. I stared at the documents in disbelief. They had turned my land into a revenue stream without even asking. They had crossed a line. Smiling slowly, wickedly, I made a plan. If they thought laying cable was a power move, they were about to learn what real power looked like. I wasn't just going to sit there and let this slide. I would take control of that fiber optic line and lease it to their biggest competitor. This wasn't war yet, but it would be. The next morning, I walked out to the field with a new attitude and a thermos full of fresh, stronger coffee. The orange cable lay beneath the soil like a symbol of arrogance, but now I saw it differently. I saw leverage. Real, legal, juicy leverage. Karen had no idea what kind of game she had just set in motion. By sunrise, Lydia had confirmed what we already suspected. No permit, no permission. The HOA had skipped every legal step, and that fiber optic line was an unauthorized utility encroachment on my land. I had every right to remove it or monetize it myself. I sent Karen a polite email offering to work together to resolve the misunderstanding. It was a trap, and she walked right into it. Less than an hour later, Karen responded, practically congratulating herself for convincing me to cooperate. She even attached an email thread with the ISP detailing their deal. I smiled. This was her confession. She had just handed me everything I needed to take action. Lydia got to work drafting a cease and desist letter while I marked every spot the cable ran through with bright yellow flags. I posted signs around the field warning of unauthorized utility use, complete with QR codes linking to a public post detailing everything: photos, security footage, and even a side-by-side comparison of Karen smiling while overseeing the installation like it was some kind of community garden project, instead of a shady land grab. That afternoon, I received a message from my old neighbor Bryce. He had started a tech company and was now running his own local fiber network called Lightning Link Fiber. He had been trying to get access to our neighborhood for months, but couldn't because of the HOA's exclusive ISP contract. But when he saw my post, he couldn't stop laughing. "You just bulldozed the back door with your tractor," he said over the phone. I explained the situation and asked if he could legally run fiber through my land. He was all in. "Hell yes," he said. And just like that, we had a deal. Bryce's team would run parallel fiber across my property, legally this time, and I would lease the land to them at a fair rate. He would install a junction box that could service the entire HOA-covered neighborhood, offering speeds 3 times faster and at half the price. No contracts, no throttling, no HOA markup. It was going to be perfect. The HOA's grip on the neighborhood was slipping, and Karen knew it. She sent me another email, this time less smug, asking for a sit-down to discuss mutual benefits. Translation: they were realizing how badly they had messed up and were trying to patch things up before the entire neighborhood found out. It was too late. Bryce and I launched a flyer campaign advertising better internet at a lower price. The blue mailers went out, and soon I was getting calls from neighbors thanking me for finally doing something about the overpriced, spotty service. Karen wasn't happy about it. I found passive-aggressive notes taped to my mailbox. One read, "Your actions affect the whole community." Another simply said, "Traitor," written in red marker. A week later, I caught Karen and 2 HOA board members sneaking onto my property disguised as bird watchers. I stepped out and filmed the whole thing. "Private property! Trespassing is a criminal offense," I shouted. They backed off, muttering under their breath. Karen turned bright red. "You can't just hijack our infrastructure," she hissed. "Your infrastructure?" I shot back. "You laid it illegally on my land. I own the dirt, the rights, and now, thanks to you, the leverage." She tried to bluster about lawyers and lawsuits, but I wasn't fazed. "Bring it," I said. "I already have an attorney." And that was the last time Karen got the last word. Later that night, I received a call from a regional manager at the ISP the HOA had partnered with. His tone was calm, professional, and yet very nervous. He suggested we come to an agreement, perhaps renegotiating the contract or even sharing revenue. I didn't hesitate in my response. "You're leasing from people who don't own the land," I told him. "That makes the entire deal invalid." He tried to argue, but I had a better offer for him. Lease the land from me instead at a higher price or rip the whole thing out. He said he would get back to me, but I already knew how this would play out. I hung up, poured myself a whiskey, and stepped onto the porch looking out over the moonlit field. I couldn't help but smile. The HOA thought they could steal my land and make a profit, but they had missed something crucial. This field wasn't just dirt. It was mine. Every inch, every rock, every stubborn patch of grass. Now it was a battleground, but this time I was the one in control. I was the one laying down the cable, the kind that carried data, dollars, and most importantly, revenge. Karen's smile had vanished, and that alone was sweet satisfaction, but what followed was pure chaos, and I was there for every moment of it. The moment our flyer started hitting mailboxes, the HOA stranglehold over the neighborhood cracked like frozen pipes in January. Their so-called exclusive provider deal wasn't so exclusive anymore. Neighbors who had quietly complained about slow speeds and hidden fees suddenly had a choice. And there was nothing more terrifying to a power-hungry HOA than giving people options. The first ripple came when a flood of complaints began to pour in. Neighbors started showing up at HOA meetings, waving the flyers like torches. One guy, Jeff, who'd lived there for 12 years, stormed in demanding an explanation for why the HOA hadn't disclosed the ISP kickbacks. Karen tried to explain that it was a community benefit fund, but when Jeff asked for the financial records, she shut the meeting down faster than you could say class action lawsuit. Meanwhile, Bryce and his crew were hard at work. They laid new fiber across my land, legally, with all the right permits and inspections. They even installed a main hub just 10 feet from the illegal splice box the HOA had set up. It was a shiny new monument to poetic justice. One by one, neighbors began switching to Lightning Link fiber, some getting free installation, referral bonuses, and emails explaining exactly how the HOA had overcharged them for years. Karen's inbox must have been a war zone. Then came the sabotage. At first, it was small things. Someone knocked over our promotional sign. Another day, someone left a pile of dog poop on Bryce's equipment trailer. But then one night, someone snuck onto my property, trying to dig up part of the trench for the Lightning Link line. They didn't get far before triggering the motion-activated sprinklers I'd installed specifically for Karen-style shenanigans. Lydia and I watched the footage together, bursting into laughter, when we saw a hooded figure get blasted in the face by the sprinklers and fall into the mud. The video went viral in the neighborhood's Facebook group. Though I never posted it, someone else did. The comments section erupted into a full-on war, with neighbors quickly picking sides like it was middle school cliques all over again. But the most delicious twist came from within the HOA itself. Not all board members were on board with Karen's little stunt. One of them, a mild-mannered retiree named Greg, cracked under the pressure and sent me an anonymous email with all the internal documents I could ever need. Meeting minutes, ISP invoices, and a breakdown of the money the HOA had made off the illegal cable deal. Spoiler alert, it was tens of thousands of dollars, and none of it had been disclosed to the residents. I knew exactly what to do with this information. I created a website, nothing fancy, just a clean layout, titled Karengate, the Fiber Scandal. I uploaded every document, every photo, and every video I had, including a timeline and annotated maps of my land. It was factual, it was damning, and it went viral in under 24 hours. Residents were furious. Some wanted refunds, others wanted Karen fired, and a few even suggested stringing her up in the community gazebo with fiber optic cables. By the time the next HOA meeting rolled around, it was less of a meeting and more of a protest rally. Karen tried to hold control, but she looked like a substitute teacher on the last day of school. People were shouting. Greg resigned on the spot. Another board member followed suit. Karen slammed her gavel so hard it broke, then stormed out mid-meeting to the sound of sarcastic applause. But the drama wasn't over. A few days later, a black SUV pulled into my driveway and outstepped two men in suits. I thought it was finally Karen sending in the cavalry, but no, it was representatives from the original ISP the HOA had leased to. They weren't hostile, but they weren't exactly friendly either. They introduced themselves and asked if we could talk. I invited them into the barn office and poured them coffee, intentionally too strong. They got straight to the point. Their company was concerned that their equipment was sitting on unauthorized land. Technically, I could sue them for trespassing or worse, file an injunction to have the lines removed. That would kill service for 100 households and create a PR nightmare for them. I nodded as if I was contemplating their predicament, then laid out my offer. I would allow the lines to stay temporarily, but only if they terminated their contract with the HOA, acknowledged their mistake, and renegotiated access rights directly with me. Oh, and the new rate would include enough zeros to pay for a new tractor, some land improvements, and a generous inconvenience fee. They tried to lowball me. I reminded them that I had every legal right to cut the line tomorrow if I wanted to. Just to drive the point home, I walked them out to the field, pointed at the illegal splice box, and said, "That thing, one shovel and 20 minutes, it's gone." They didn't argue. A few days later, the new deal was signed. I was now officially leasing my land to two ISPs, one old, one new, and I was making more per month than I ever did selling hay. Bryce was thrilled. He even offered me an advisory role in his company, which I accepted, mostly for the sake of putting Fiber Mogul on my business cards. Karen, meanwhile, was unraveling. The board was collapsing. The residents were rebelling, and her internet monopoly, gone. She was grasping at straws. She filed a noise complaint against the installation crew, claiming that the new fiber junction box clashed with the neighborhood's aesthetic. At one point, she even accused me of hosting an illegal data center in my barn. I posted a video tour of my so-called data center, which consisted of a few servers and a router duct taped to the wall next to my chicken feed. The comment section exploded with memes, including one where someone photoshopped Karen as a medieval inquisitor chasing a Wi-Fi signal with a torch. That week, I held an open house in my field, free snacks, lemonade, a tour of the new hub station, and Bryce gave a presentation on how the internet actually worked. Families showed up with lawn chairs. Kids ran around with printed out Lightning Link versus HOA flags. One guy even wore a shirt that said, "Plow the system." As the sun set, I looked out over the field and realized something. I hadn't just protected my land, I had changed the dynamic of the whole community. People had choices now, they had information, and best of all, they had each other. Karen had ruled with secrets and fine print. I just used a tractor and a little transparency. Of course, I knew Karen wasn't done yet. People like her don't go quietly. But for now, the board was in shambles, the lines were legally mine, and the neighborhood was connected like never before, all because someone laid the wrong cable in the wrong field. Karen filed a lawsuit thinking it was her final move in a chess game she still believed she was winning. The official paperwork came in a thick envelope delivered by a man who looked too tired to care about what was inside. I opened it on the porch, Lydia watching over my shoulder. Within seconds, she burst out laughing so loudly that the chickens scattered. The HOA was suing me for obstruction, unauthorized business activity, and, my personal favorite, willful disruption of community agreements. The best part? They listed my field as common access land, like they could just declare it theirs by typing it into a Word document. Lydia poured herself a celebratory lemonade and got to work. By the time she was finished, we had a countersuit so thick it needed its own drawer. Trespassing, fraud, civil misuse of property, and tax evasion, since the HOA had never properly declared the fiber lease income. With Greg's whistleblower emails and Bryce's technical schematics backing us up, our evidence wasn't just solid, it was bulletproof. The courtroom looked exactly how I expected. Fluorescent lights, a sleepy bailiff, and the smell of overbrewed coffee hanging in the air like regret. Karen showed up in a tailored blazer, 2 sizes too tight, flanked by 2 nervous board members and an attorney who looked like he had just Googled how to file a lawsuit. I could barely keep a straight face when he started his opening statement, trying to paint me as an uncooperative landowner who had jeopardized the neighborhood's connectivity. He even called the cable installation a community enhancement initiative, which I think he expected to sound noble, but only made the judge raise an eyebrow. Then Lydia stood up. She went through everything step by step. The lack of permits, the unauthorized digging, the secret ISP contract, the illegal profit scheme. She presented aerial photos, timestamps, soil reports, and at one point even brought out a printed map with red yarn like she was presenting a true crime documentary. The judge, who had clearly expected this to be a petty dispute, sat up straighter with every minute. Then came the kicker. We played the video footage of the HOA crew laying the cables in the early morning hours, cutting across my land like burglars in reflective vests. We showed the email where Karen admitted to the installation and discussed profits from the ISP. We even presented the screenshots of the public backlash and the site visits from the unamused ISP reps. The judge looked at Karen and asked, "Did you at any point consult the property owner before initiating this project?" Karen fumbled. We assumed community interest overrode individual land claims in this instance. The judge blinked. That's not how land ownership works. With a simple ruling, the entire case flipped. The judge dismissed the lawsuit. The court ruled in my favor, dismissing the HOA's claims entirely and granting full standing to my countersuit. They were not only ordered to pay damages for the unauthorized use of my land, but also slapped with fines for misappropriation and breach of fiduciary duty. The cherry on top was that the HOA was forced to terminate its contract with the ISP, effectively voiding their revenue stream. I can't help but smile at the memory of Karen's face when she heard the word restitution. It was priceless, something I wish I could have framed. After the trial, Bryce and I celebrated with tacos from the local gas station. It was an odd choice, but oddly perfect. With my victory now public, Bryce was already drafting plans to expand Lightning Link's service into other HOA-controlled neighborhoods. Word spread fast, and I started receiving calls from other property owners asking how they could replicate what I'd done. It felt as though I'd become the fiber optic Robin Hood, standing up for the little guy. But Karen wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. A few days after the ruling, she filed a nuisance report with the county, claiming that the new Lightning Link junction box was a health hazard. She argued it emitted dangerous electromagnetic waves that interfered with bird migration patterns and caused her neighbor's dog to bark excessively. The county inspector came out, took one look, and asked if we were playing a prank on him. After I showed him the signed permits and the new partnership with the local utility company, he chuckled, gave me a thumbs up, and left. Karen then tried to rally the remaining members of the HOA board, those who hadn't quit or gone into hiding, and called for an emergency meeting. Bryce and I attended, mostly out of morbid curiosity. About 20 residents showed up, some bringing lawn chairs, others wearing shirts that read, "Free the Fiber." Karen stood at the front, whiteboard markers in hand, presenting poorly drawn diagrams and making an emotional plea about restoring order to the community. But then Jeff, of all people, stood up and asked her directly, "Karen, how much money did the HOA make from that illegal deal?" Karen froze. Someone shouted, "Where's the money now?" And like a wave breaking, the room erupted in questions. Karen tried to maintain control, but the whiteboard was smudged, her markers dried up, and her voice trembled. By the end of the night, someone had formally called for a vote to remove her as HOA president. The motion passed unanimously. She left without another word. With Karen out, a new board was formed. Greg returned as treasurer. Jeff took over communications. And surprisingly, I was asked to be an advisor. Not because I was particularly diplomatic, but because everyone knew I could spot a scam from a mile away. I agreed, but only on the condition that all major infrastructure decisions would be publicly voted on, and no project could be initiated without property owner consent. But the final twist came from Bryce. His company was growing, and with my field now serving as a major hub, he proposed installing a permanent solar-powered microstation right on my property. It would serve not only the HOA neighborhood, but 3 others nearby, turning my land into the epicenter of independent internet service in the region. In exchange, I'd receive equity, ongoing revenue, and a seat on the company's advisory board. We broke ground 2 weeks later. Karen, now a former resident, moved out. Rumors spread that she sold her house at a loss to a young couple who immediately installed lawn gnomes and renamed their Wi-Fi network Whore. I sent them a welcome basket. Bryce's business exploded using our victory as the flagship story. Lightning Link began partnering with other landowners, bypassing greedy HOAs and corporate monopolies across the state. They even offered me a formal advisory role along with a generous slice of ownership. I turned my barn office into a half-time operations hub, a half-time storage unit for local kids' science projects. The fiber-powered chicken cam was a hit. People started calling me the cable cowboy. Ridiculous, yes, but secretly awesome. I leaned into it more than I should have. Lydia even sent me a belt buckle with a little router on it, which I proudly wore to the next neighborhood block party. Through it all, there was a deeper lesson that stuck with me. Entitlement comes in many forms. Sometimes it wears a business suit. Sometimes it carries a clipboard. Sometimes it knocks on your door with polite words and a smile. But it always has the same signature. It takes without asking and assumes you won't fight back. But when you do, when you call it out and shine a light on it, it shrinks fast. And once people see entitlement for what it is, they don't forget. They rally. They take their power back. The field is quieter now. No more drama, no more battles, just the soft hum of the wind through the grass and the invisible pulse of data moving through the lines I own, on land I fought for. Every time I walk past the microstation, I think about how close they came to getting away with it all. How a single oversight, a single missed opportunity to speak up would have let them win. But they didn't, because I said no, because I stood my ground, and because someone tried to bury their greed in my dirt and forgot I was still the one holding the shovel. A few days after the new microhub was up and running, I walked around my property at sunrise. The new station stood quietly in the distance, humming like a content machine. The field, once a battleground, now looked peaceful again. No more trenches, no more markers, no more unauthorized trucks sneaking in at dawn. Just my land, my rules, and a fiber backbone humming beneath the surface like buried lightning. I passed the old route where the legal cable had once run. We left it there for legal reasons, let it rot as a monument to the HOA's arrogance. The sign next to it now said, "Caution, former HO ego zone." Someone had added a drawing of Karen's face in Sharpie. I didn't erase it. Lydia told me a few days later that the final settlement checks had cleared. The HOA had paid the court-ordered damages, though it had to liquidate some of its emergency fund and cancel a few pet projects, including a marble fountain for the clubhouse. Karen, unsurprisingly, had vanished. Word was she'd moved across town and tried to join another HOA, but after someone forwarded them a link to the Karen Gate website, her application mysteriously got delayed indefinitely. Her old house sold to a young couple who installed a skate ramp in the driveway and a massive inflatable flamingo in the front yard. The new Wi-Fi network name? Cable crisis avoided. I sent them a welcome basket. Bryce's business was booming, and I was a part of it all. No longer just a guy who fought back, but now an integral part of the growing tech revolution. In the end, I had taken my land back, not with fists or fury, but with persistence, legal briefs, and a well-timed tractor breakdown. I had become more than just a landowner. I had become the network. The sky streaked with orange and gold as the last cable was laid into the microstation and neighbors gathered to witness it. A year ago, no one would have believed that a quiet farming field would become the heart of the region's fastest internet. Especially not because the HOA tried to sneak a cable through it, but here we were. And it felt damn good. The unofficial launch party was just the beginning. As I stood there watching the community celebrate, I realized this wasn't just about fiber optics or technology. It was about the people who lived here, about how standing your ground and fighting back against entitlement could turn a field of dirt into something valuable, respected, and undeniably yours. The fight was over, and for the first time in a long time, everything felt right.